Welcome everybody online and in person to the Morgantown Area Partnerships Infrastructure Week event. This is our first panel. We're going to get this done in an hour, so we're going to be on time. This is long-term planning. I'm going to introduce our panelists. First is Eric Carlson, the Vice President of Economic Development Services at the Morgantown Area Partnership. Eric started his career in Kentucky, primarily in the state capital. And during that time, Eric found two industries particularly interesting: bourbon and economic development. He's not alone on the first one. In 2015, he moved to Indiana to take a consulting role with a workforce and economic development firm before accepting a position as development director for the city of West Lafayette. There, he oversaw the completion of two area plans, managed the day-to-day of a $120 million road project, collaboration with Purdue University, and acted as the owner on a $16 million City Hall project and a $34 million aquatic center project at the request of the mayor. In his 3.5-year tenure, he oversaw $850 million in public and private development within the city of 42,000 people. Finally, in 2020, Eric relocated to Morgantown and has been working with the partnership ever since. So Eric, thank you for coming. Appreciate your time. Next is Ted Spellick, Associate Vice President of Auxiliary and Business Services at West Virginia University. At WVU, Ted oversees a variety of services, including facilities, planning, design, construction, and scheduling, procurement, contracting and payment services, sustainability, and transportation and parking. Prior to his current role, Ted was the Assistant Vice President and Chief Procurement Officer at WVU. Before joining the university, Ted served as Vice President in the Strategic Sourcing and Alliances Department at Sony Pictures Entertainment. I don't get to say that very often. There, he was responsible for the worldwide sourcing of all marketing, sales, general administrative goods and services. He has also worked for the General Counsel of USA Networks, which is the parent company of USA, Sci-Fi Channel, Ticketmaster, and other entertainment companies. And there he focused on corporate administration, mergers and acquisitions, and other legal matters. Finally, Ted is also a foodie who enjoys baking and hosting events. So I'm going to be picking your brain on how the cupcakes were and how we did those overall host here. Next up is Mr. Michael Mills. Michael is the founder and managing principal at the Mills Group. Michael leads all facets of the daily operations of the Mills Group, which he founded in 2005. This firm maintains a focus on the design of new structures, which encompass the rich architectural character of the past, executed site plans that are respective of the opportunities and constraints, and implemented the sensitive preservation of historic buildings. I've seen your work in person. It's amazing.
Thank you.
Michael has over 25 years of experience in historical preservation, architectural design, and planning. And through his extensive work with historic structures, he has a detailed working knowledge of the Secretary of Interior's standards for historic preservation projects. Today, Michael is here representing Monongalia County Planning. Next up is Mr. Ricky Yeager, Development Services Director at the City of Morgantown. Before arriving in Morgantown in March of 2021, Ricky served as the City Planner and Development Director for the City of Parkersburg for 11 years. He holds an undergraduate degree in urban and regional geography, as well as dual master's degrees in city and regional planning and geography from, get this right, the Ohio State University. Very important. Ricky is a certified planner with the American Institute of Certified Planners and an economic development finance professional with the National Development Council. With the city, Ricky serves with a dedicated team of public servants to positively facilitate development opportunities in the community through the administration of the city's planning, zoning, and building codes. He also enjoys collaborating with stakeholders to develop policies and initiatives that create opportunities for economic advancement and foster a sense of community. So, Ricky, thank you for being here. Last but not least is our moderator, Bill Austin, the Executive Director of the Morgantown Monongalia Metropolitan Planning Organization. Bill is also a member of the Infrastructure Week subcommittee. So he has been a large part of putting this event on for this year. Bill is a graduate of Virginia Tech and earning bachelor's degrees and a master's degrees in political science. There, he has been the executive director of the MMPO since June of 2009. During his time in Morgantown, he has led several public involvement activities, including the Crossroads Monongalia effort as part of the development of the Metropolitan Transportation. Bill has also worked with the WVU School of Public Health to identify best practices for reaching underserved communities in the transportation planning process. And between 1989 and 2002, he worked for 3 MPOs in various capacities in both Virginia and North Carolina. And during his time in Carolina, he served 2 terms as the chairman of the North Carolina Association of MPOs. And while in West Virginia, he has served 4 terms as the chairman of the West Virginia Association of MPOs. So Bill, thank you for being here and thank you for moderating the panel. Floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And I just want to add a side note on that last one. I've served 4 terms because nobody else wants to do it. But we hope to have a very informative and discussion today with our panelists. What we would like to do is open up with a quick overview of the planning processes that each of my co-panelists work with. And then I'll kind of do an overview of what I do, and then we'd like to open the floor for discussion. So we'll simply work our way down the table and ask Ricky to begin the discussion.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Tony, for the invitation and for you, Bill, an invitation to speak today. So just want to kind of start at a high level, and it's making the assumption that a lot of folks in the room doesn't know what a comprehensive plan is. It's a document that's required by West Virginia State Code to be updated every 10 years for a municipality or a county, and is a way to really look holistically at what's going on in that community based on existing conditions and future growth projections. It's also a visionary and aspirational document of what the community wants to see for itself in the future, and a policy document in terms of outlining projects, programs, and initiatives, prioritizing those initiatives, and then assigning people to take responsibility for them, and then looking at the financial costs associated with it. And finally, it's a land management and development tool in the community. So where's the community going to grow? How's it going to expand? And so those are the kind of the takeaways I see overall for the comprehensive plan, in addition to the state code requirements. And for planners and policymakers, I think land use management plans and implementation plan are the keys, the deliverables from that document, right? So when somebody wants to rezone property or wants to develop a new project in the community, they're going to be looking at, or the planners and policymakers should be looking at what the community adopted as its vision for the community, as well as the different strategies and implementation strategies that go along with that. So in terms of looking at how a comprehensive plan connects to implementation, in terms of, for instance, in the city of Morgantown, our capital improvement program, just wanted to go through a couple examples that was actually approved by City Council for the 2022-2027 capital improvement plan that relate directly from, or the projects that I'm going to mention directly come from the city's comprehensive plan that was adopted in 2013. They include, in terms of development services, a downtown vision and strategic plan that the city has been on each year, allocating funds to do a study to see what downtown can and should become, and all the other things associated with that. And then a wayfinding and gateway program. And that was something that's been talked about for a number of years. It's my understanding that it was started and stopped. And I think we're going to be picking the ball back up again here in the near future to try to get that done. And both of those activities were especially from a wayfinding and gateway perspective, were mentioned in the comprehensive plan as a partnership with the MPO, because obviously a lot of the city's roadways are owned by DOH. And so there obviously needs some partnership there. In terms of engineering and public works, particularly the streets division, one of the goals was the improvement and maintenance of 106 miles of public right-of-ways in the community. And in that plan, it specifically mentions also looking at other considerations, pedestrian and other accessibility improvements. So for the next 5 years, the city is planning to allocate $1.8 million each year to make those improvements. And that will involve this year in particular, installing 20 to 30 new ramps that are being associated with the paving project that was just approved by City Council, as well as doing 1 mile of paving on the Caperton Trail to try to keep that improved as well. In terms of another project that's been slated forward that relates to the 2013 comprehensive plan is the Spruce Street Trail Connector. And that's going to reopen approximately 750 feet of abandoned street that connects Spruce and Kirk Street downtown directly to Deckers Creek. And that was one of the things that came out of the last plan, is trying to facilitate more interior connections down to our existing trails. The funding allocated for that is $225,000 in FY24. So just wanted to show kind of the connectivity from what comes from, or at least the goals and initiatives from, a comprehensive plan and how that connects to the city's capital improvement plan. In terms of what the city's doing now, in terms of our comprehensive plan update, Morgantown 2023, we kicked the project off last fall. We hired the firm of Roadside Hardwell out of Alexandria, Virginia, to help us with this endeavor, along with the MPO and Stantec and all of our partners here at the table that are all working, all the municipalities and county that are working on their comprehensive plan update. And actually, we will be meeting with our steering committee and our consultants for the project next week to give us an update from what they've been able to gather in terms of existing conditions, future projections, and also looking at starting to look at some strategies going forward about how to improve and make Morgantown a better place to live. Just by the numbers, some of the community engagement numbers, we had 70 people participate in stakeholder interviews. We had 30 people attend a WVU pop-up event at the Mountain Lair. We had 95 individuals attend public meetings, both online and in person. And we had 71 folks participate in online surveys. Our next steps include looking at vision and goal statements, drafting the plan, and hopefully having a plan to present to the community for consideration this fall. So with that, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ricky. Michael?
Great, thanks, Ricky. So I'm representing Andrew Gaspray. Andrew Gaspray is our county planner. I'm actually a third term member of the commission, the planning commission. And it's been a great experience for me to be able to be part of that commission. Most of our review process is within the West Run zoning district. As many of you know, that's our only planning and zoning district within the county. Certainly there's been talk of other districts, but those haven't come forward yet. And certainly we've been working on some subdivision ordinances and worked through many renditions of that. And hopefully that'll come to the table here soon to help with planning and controlled growth. So those are some things that we work on as we meet every month and review things. Many of our reviews are cell tower approvals, and much of it obviously is within that West Run district. But just to echo some things that Ricky said, you know, really for us, this comprehensive planning update is really about planning and being proactive for our future destiny. And that's what's exciting about it. We do have a great consultant team. Ricky mentioned Stantec as the prime, Roadside and Harwell, who I've had the pleasure of working with before. We worked on the master plan for Arlington Cemetery with them when I was in Washington, D.C. There's a great firm. And I've been part of the steering committee that Ricky mentioned as one of the members of that steering committee, kind of crossing over between city and county. And then we have City Explained, who is our consultant. They're really focused on, you know, the planning, the public outreach, the data analysis, and the documentation. You know, to date, we've been working on doing a community workshop, really between that and doing a community survey between January 24th and February 24th. We've done an online survey that's talked about community vision, values, thresholds for the future development and growth. And we've had over 100 folks participate in that survey, which has been great. Out of that survey, the majority of the participants wanted to see growth occur when or where infrastructure and roads exist to support it. That was a pretty major piece of the feedback. There was an understanding of current infrastructure provisions within the municipalities and surrounding areas, access to transportation corridors, redevelopment opportunities for underutilized or undeveloped sites. And it's expected that the future growth in the county will likely be seen in these areas first, prior to spilling over into areas directly outside the municipal limits. Other findings in this comp plan so far, and again, this is really data driven, that's really collecting a lot of data right now. You know, in 2010 census, it was projected that our population would be about 105,474 people in 2019. And actually in 2020 census, it was 105,822. So about a 1.1% growth. What does that really mean? That means 13,488 new residents and a demand for about 6,200 new houses or new housing units by 2030. So that's a pretty big deal. And I think we're going to see even more growth certainly coming out of the pandemic as folks are coming towards West Virginia. You know, based upon this data analysis and future growth projections, the county will need to absorb growth throughout thoughtfully and intentionally. So that's the real intent of this comp plan. And really our next steps are furthering this community engagement, furthering some actual putting pencil to paper and getting the plan really mapped out. So some great things happening, and proud to be part of this effort.
Thank you, Michael. Hi, I'm Ted Svulik. I'm the Associate Vice President of Auxiliary and Business Services at WVU, which I tell people is a long way of saying I oversee most of the physical operations of our campus. I'm excited to be here. Bill and Tony, thank you for hosting us. WVU, over its 155-year history, has done a number of 10-year plans similar to the cities. And so we're in the middle of that process now. It's kind of an interesting time for us to be planning at the same time as the city, and an opportunity for us to work together with the city, the county, Morgantown Area Partnership, and the other folks that you see on the panel here. We've got, and through our planning process, we've worked with our campus community and the board of directors for the university to come up with some guiding principles for our plans. And there's 8 of them, and I won't bore you with all of them. But there's several that I think are important to this conversation. The first is around connectivity. And so we hear things like wayfinding, is certainly something on campus. We think about it a little bit different in terms of how to get our students, from where they are into their classroom, to their professor's office, wherever that is, but broadly around the community as well. And so there are lots of touch points I think we have in those ways. We also think about connectivity as sort of this intermodal transportation opportunity and in Morgantown. And so our students take mass transit, things like the PRT and buses, but they also have micro transit type things, whether that's walking. We're a bike friendly campus. So we're a Bike USA campus, and other ways to get around. And so we try and make sure we think about and plan through all of those different areas when we think about connectivity on our campus. And we also think about accessibility. How do we make sure that everyone can participate in those transportation modes as we're able? So that's our connectivity goal. Strengthening the campus's identity is also one of our big goals, and that when we think about that, it's looking at our gateways and our edges, right? So how do you know when you've arrived at WVU, and does that, how does that play into your way through our campus? And so I think over time, you'll see us improving some of our gateways, right? Those areas where when you hit the Evansdale campus, you've arrived, or even on our downtown campuses. And so that'll play into our overall plan. And then the third, which I think is important, is enriching interactions with our communities. And so when we think about that goal, it's making sure that we do engage in the right way with the communities around us to make sure that we together come up with the best possible plans for our future and for Morgantown's future. So we're excited to be here and having this conversation. Some of the big initiatives that we have coming up, we've been working on a campus connector, the possibility of helping students get between our campuses. And so in this case, it's trying to connect our downtown campus with our Evansdale campus. hopefully to pull some of the pedestrian traffic off of this narrow sidewalks on University Avenue. And so that's been going on. We've been working with the city to straighten out Campus Ave down where it hits Beechhurst. So that road comes down at an angle now. We're hoping to kind of square that off together with the help of the Department of Highways and others. But that should help that intersection and safety in that area as well. And then we're working quite a bit on pedestrian safety plans. And so it's not lost on most of the people in the room. We have areas of campus where walking is the primary mode of campus. When you go to Grumbines Island or some of the other areas, our students, are constantly walking through intersections. And so I think our, part of the conversations we have is how do we make those safer and how do we make transportation through there smooth or in or around there smooth so that our students and other pedestrians walking on our campus are safe. So we're thrilled to be interacting and happy to be working together on our plans. So,
all right, thank you. And so my role with the partnership is a little bit different than the gentleman sitting next to me, because what we look at is more from a stakeholder, in addition to the stakeholder work that they do. How do we make sure that we get out the information that the public might be interested in, that there are these plans going on, and help funnel it back into the people that are making the designs. And it's very similar to the role that I was in when I was the development director for the city of West Lafayette. We were fortunate there to have what was called the Area Plan Commission, which was a joint MPO and planning department for the entire county, where both Lafayette and West Lafayette joined in through what was called the Unified Zoning Ordinance, so that everything funneled in through the Plan Commission, the single Plan Commission, then back out to individual city councils. And if there was a change that was made to the UZO, it had to then also be approved by the county commission and by both city councils as well for it to be truly unified. There were some things that were and some things that were not. But in that process, it allowed me to not have to be into the nitty-gritty of the plans, but help work with the general public, work with developers to understand what the plans were, and from time to time act as a trail guide to those that were wanting to get things through, and said, hey, I may not have done this plan, but I know how we can get what you're looking for done in the aspects of the plans. And in my time there I was only in the city for 3.5 years, as my wife was finishing her PhD before we came here. She's at the university now. WVU was in between when comprehensive plans were done, but I was thrown into the middle of some major projects. The previous comprehensive plan for the city of West Lafayette called for re-envisioning of State Street. Was a state road that had been given over to the city that went through the heart of the commercial district for the city of West Lafayette and through the heart of campus. And my boss there, the mayor, had worked closely with President Daniels at Purdue University to not only actually bring the university into incorporated West Lafayette for the first time through annexation in 2014, but then to create a plan for this re-envisioning of that corridor and all the roads that touched it. It was a $120 million project that the city and the university each paid $60 million of. And the way we were able to reimburse ourselves through that was through building up our TIF districts. A new TIF district was created on what had been Purdue land that was then swapped with their private investment arm, the Purdue Research Foundation. So that money those properties came into the tax roll, and we saw an incredible boom in development to help ensure that the new corridor that went in, that got rid of old one-way streets, that got rid of narrow sidewalks, if sidewalks at all, were replaced with two-way roads, pedestrian and bicycle facilities, combination of protected bike lanes and wide sidewalks, so that the university and the community itself had much more of a 21st century feel instead of a 1970s feel, which had previously been the case. And so I was fortunate enough to come in when that planning process was done and then focus on a few areas. Our downtown area plan which when I oversaw that, it passed city council one night, and the next day was my last day on the job because I wanted to make sure I got that through. And then I was tired of living away from my wife, so I made it here to Morgantown just in time for the world to shut down in March of 2020. But then a year or two before that as well, more land that had been annexed in that major annexation that I had spoke of earlier. We also did an area plan for that, which those differ greatly from comprehensive plans because they are truly just focused on smaller areas within a city, and was fortunate enough to work with great professionals like those that are up here through the county planning office to do the reports, but with a lot of input from the community, from the city, and being at that table.
Thank you very much, Eric. That's a pretty comprehensive overview. I will go ahead and take the moderator's privilege and discuss the Morgantown Monongalia MPO. And I've worked for MPOs for a long time, so it's something very dear to my heart. Metropolitan planning organizations are mandated for any urban population over 50,000. And the original impetus for metropolitan planning organizations goes back to the 1950s, and the 1960s, and even the early 1970s with the construction of the interstate highway system. And what was happening at that time was state planners and federal planners came up with the great ideas for the interstate highway system. And they were trying to build the wonderful system that we have in place now. But a lot of times what they would do was aim for targets of convenience. They would look at low-income communities. They would look at areas with underserved communities and identify that there was a need to help those communities. And they thought that urban renewal would be the way to do it. So they would take interstate highways and put them through these many times very prosperous in their own right communities, but looked underserved, and put an interstate highway through them and think of it as urban renewal and urban improvement. I worked on a project in Greensboro, North Carolina, many years ago as a beginning planner, where a vibrant African-American community was wiped out by NCDOT putting US 220 right through their neighborhood, which was right at North Carolina A&T University. So in the 1970s, MPOs became mandated for urban areas. And in the 1980s, early 1990s, MPOs became more empowered. But the purpose of an MPO is to represent our community to both the state and to the Federal Highway Administration, federal organizations. And so we are a regional agency that encompasses high population density areas such as Morgantown that have a population over 50,000. And our board is very representative of the community. We have the Monongalia County Commission serves on our board. 3 members of the city of Morgantown serve on our board. We have representatives of Granville, Westover, Star City, and Blacksville, as well as WVU. What we work to do is develop a regional transportation plan that represents the needs of our community. Our policy board's 2 main functions are: 1, the development of a metropolitan transportation plan, and 2, approval of the use of federal funds by the Division of Highways within our urban area. DOH cannot use money, federal money, in our area without the approval of my board. And that's really the only stick that we have. We have a hard time getting projects programmed because we don't have funds allocated to us for that, but we do have a say. So if there's a project that comes along that is inimical to the best interests of the community, then our policy board can stand up and say, no, we don't want that project. When the policy board approves the use of federal funds, what they are saying, and what's called our Transportation Improvement Program, what they are saying is the project is in congruence with our Metropolitan Transportation Plan. So really, for MPOs and the use of federal funds in our area, our Metropolitan Transportation Plan is the key to getting and utilizing federal funds in an effective manner. Now, so that's kind of the big picture. So how do we interact and work with our partners here? Well, the city of Morgantown's comprehensive plan, Monongalia County's comprehensive plan, also Westover, Granville, and Star City are all working to update their comprehensive plans now, feed directly into our metropolitan transportation plan. And the easiest tangible idea I can give you about it is we are required to have a regional travel demand model, which means it's basically a computer simulation of our high-level roads, arterials, interstate highways, those sorts of things. And we've modeled the land use that comes out of the comprehensive planning efforts from the city, the county, and these other communities in our regional travel demand model. We've modeled where people live and where people go to work. And we take those trips and we load them onto the street network as it currently exists. And then we take the projected future growth, which is being developed by all of these comprehensive planning efforts, and WVU has future projected growth, and certainly the Morgantown Area Partnership has an understanding and appreciation of where they believe growth is going to occur. We take all those and feed those into our regional travel demand model. And we say, well, what does our street network look like with all the additional traffic from where we think this growth is going? And that's how we identify what we believe are future deficiencies in the roadway network. So the comprehensive planning efforts, the growth projections that are done for it, the growth that's going on in the development community, all impact our travel demand network. And that's where we come up with primary idea of where future deficiencies are going to be. That's a simplified version. But what is also very much important are the policies and considerations that are put in place with all of these comprehensive plans. As somebody who's done transportation planning and work for years, people don't understand how something as simple as the distance between driveways negatively impacts how a roadway works. When you have driveways too close together, imagine two people trying to take a left turn at the same time. You have an accident. Or people trying to make a left turn interfering with a driveway that's located to another place. So it's not only the actual growth that we try to project and understand where deficiencies are, but we also have a real interest in understanding how the roadway network is going to operate in the best interest of the public and the most cost-effective interests in the public. So we are interested in policies such as driveway permitting, and actually the West Virginia Department of Transportation's driveway specifications are good for rural areas. Well, we're not a rural area, we're an urban area, right? That's what I've just kind of tried to say with having an MPO. Our standards should be tighter than what DOH has because we have higher traffic volumes and we're an urban community. So the policies that come out of these comprehensive planning efforts are very important to us in making sure that our roadway network works as effectively and efficiently as we can, especially in a cost-effective manner. Right now, we are in a unusual position of having a lot of transportation funding coming about, but that's not going to last forever. And so the fact to use our current dollars in an effective manner with easily identified policies that make the transportation network stay efficient is key because those funds will go away. So those are some of the ways that we interact with those communities. And we also look to incorporate the vision our communities have as they express in their comprehensive plans. If the community wants a more walkable community, then we understand at the MPO we need to work on walkability. We also understand that there's a need for improvements for the automobile. We understand the mile ground needed widening and those projects. We take a very balanced approach to trying to get projects programmed. And one of the things that I will help you understand why Congress has this emphasis, we spend tens of millions of dollars on our transportation projects. And Congress wants to make sure that those dollars are spent in a manner that meets their goals and also the manners of our communities. That's why we have an MPO, is to hear those communities' concerns and bring them together and marry them to the funding. The Mile Ground Widening Project really came online when I first got here about 2011, 2012, and was programmed. You may have seen the article in the newspaper saying that DOH hopes to have that project completed by November of this year. Transportation plan projects take a long time. And I know that's 10 years seems unusually long and is very frustrating for people. In the transportation business, a project of that size, it's not all that unusual. Typically, if all the stars are in alignment, the funding's in place, and everything from word go, when the funding becomes available, it takes 7 years to get a transportation project built. And we're talking about allocations of up to tens of millions of dollars and things that impact property owners and businesses and families' lives as they are commuting. It is not a trivial task. And so Congress in its wisdom created MPOs to help us be that interface. And to pull the efforts of these folks together and develop a comprehensive transportation plan that addresses the community's needs. We just adopted an updated metropolitan transportation plan. Our policy board, and I will recognize Commissioner Sakura and Mr. Justice, who are here from my policy board, unanimously adopted our transportation plan, which is working with a lot of the foundational work that's been done with the city and the county and the other communities' foundational work. We feel like it's a good plan. We had quite a bit of input, including over almost 500 comments received from the public on an interactive map that we had. We received 58 comments approximately from the public when we released the draft transportation plan. And my policy board took it very seriously and had a meeting where they discussed the priorities and worked together to develop a list of what we believe are the highest priority projects for our community. So we are very committed to public involvement and to bringing the community's needs together and hearing from everyone, the public sector, the private sector, to make sure that things are working. And I will say, when I talked earlier a little bit about the standards, a large part of the projects that we have programmed are to retrofit county roads that are owned by DOH that are not to current urban standards, that are operating inefficiently, they're dangerous, and they are not providing the community the complete service that they could. And so coming up to these standards, I think, is important for the economic viability of our community. We are competing with a lot of areas and having a transportation network that is supportive of community development, as well as the people who live here, and making this a place where people want to live is, I think, key to what we do. So that's just a very brief overview. And for those of you who are here, I have an executive summary of our recently adopted transportation plan. And if those of you who are watching online, you can visit the MPO's website, plantogether.org, and you can download the full transportation plan or just the executive summary. But I thank all my colleagues here. The MPO builds on their work and values their work, and we could not be successful without it. So after that, I'll open up for any questions. Yes.
Appreciate listening to all of the sounds like the transportation plan makes an effort to incorporate, I count 6 other comprehensive plans.
Yes.
Eric, I'll go back to you maybe for the last question of this, but I'd ask 3 of you in the middle. And then obviously we don't have 3 other representatives from Star City, Westover, and Granville here to talk about their comprehensive plans. But wouldn't it be a lot more comprehensive, a lot less individualistic if we at least started combining them, working together? It sounds like there's probably 6 different firms that have been hired to do these 6 different comprehensive plans. Sure, there's commonality on board and these things, but I think it's a challenge that's been identified. I think there's an opportunity. It sounds like Eric maybe has been party to a process whereby a larger community county put them all together. And that it can't started off with Westover and Morgantown combining and doing one effort, and then you started adding in that. A lot better process.
I'll be happy to answer that question. The MPO actually solicited all of the urban areas communities to participate in the comprehensive planning process. And in fact, we developed a request for qualifications and invited all of the communities to participate in that. We selected the firm Stantec with a committee that involved all of those communities. The smaller communities were taken aback at the relative expense of the consulting firm that we found. In 2013, we had Star City, the city of Morgantown, and the MPO did a joint planning effort. This year, we had Monongalia County and the city of Morgantown and the MPO doing a joint planning effort. The other communities opted to work with the WVU Land Use Law Clinic and the development of their comprehensive plans, which is a lower cost effort. We are staying in touch with them, Jesse Richardson's group, and they are informing our process, even though they did not join us in the consortium. So we have been working on that effort.
Good to hear. So is there a long-term goal to get them all right together?
Yes, yeah. And we are in a fortunate position that all the comprehensive plans come due at approximately the same time the MPO's transportation plan update. That happens about every 10 years. The transportation plan update comes every 5 years. Yes, sir. Mr. Williams.
Thanks, Bill. To the point about the driveways, I think to the layperson, they think about transportation, particular traffic, they think about new bridge being erected or a tunnel broad, things like that. But certainly there's more of an art to what you do, and you touched on the driveways. So is there kind of a laundry list of things like that that are seemingly small changes that aggregated together would benefit, and are those things that we can do by statute? I know that you mentioned the driveways. I've never heard of that before. I'd love to address that. Are there other things that we can address by statute that help like that?
Well, the Division of Highways has an adopted driveway manual, and Mr. Weaver, who's here present, can also give you more information about that. And there are some similar guidelines for the development of those kinds of facilities. The Division of Highways takes a relatively light hand with the implementation of the regulations because they're primarily for rural areas. The vast majority of West Virginia is rural, so their regulations are looking at rural areas. Their response on those issues has been that the cities and the counties have the authority to put in more stringent standards if they so desire. And so that's been their response. We're working with the entire state, and there are only 8 MPO size areas within West Virginia, so it's harder for them to come up with a rural or versus an urban standard. But we've seen in the past instances of where that's come and put a bite on the more urban areas because of those less stringent standards.
Thank you.
Sure.
Before we get to the next question, I would ask questions.
I apologize.
Our mics aren't set up.
Okay, Mr. Weaver.
Yeah, first of all, thanks to all the panelists, and I guess I'll try to follow up to the previous questions, and it's going to mention also the driveway manual and requirements, and I guess I'll try to dovetail a couple questions into one question. I guess the first, and many people aren't aware that West Virginia is just one of 4 states where the Division of Highways basically owns and operates most of the roads within the state, and including the arteries through our towns and county routes, et cetera, et cetera. So with regard to the different municipalities, I guess the first question with regard to the different municipalities and the ordinances, if one of our local towns does have an ordinance that with regard to driveway spacing, with the Division of Highways have to adhere to that ordinance? Through these main streets that go through town? I've been confused about how some of that applies. My second question, I'll go to Michael Mills and others. Thanks for your service on the County Planning Commission. On a higher level, as you mentioned, we've got the West Run Planning District, but we don't have other planning districts in our county. And to my understanding, most of the counties in West Virginia don't have planning. So I'm interested in opinions about countywide planning and the hurdles of not having the countywide planning are to our local area and perhaps other counties.
Okay, but yeah, thank you for the questions. I will try and paraphrase both of them for our listening audience. The first question was with state routes going through cities and towns, cities and towns apparently having the ability to hold tighter standards than the Division of Highways. How does that work with a roadway that's owned by the Division of Highways? Typically, the way that would work is would be the town's planning process, which is comparable to a subdivision ordinance, would have the requirement for approval of a development, which is where the city's or town's more stringent regulation would come into place. The Division of Highways would not object to this, the town enforcing it through their subdivision ordinance process or their planning and zoning process if they have zoning. So that's how that would work. Now, the Division of Highways would not enforce the town's tighter, more stringent policies, but they would allow the town to enforce that policy on their roadways as long as it does not conflict with the Division of Highways policy. And the second question was to Mr. Mills, was how he viewed the limited amount of planning and zoning authority that the county has and how it relates to the remainder of the county.
Thanks, David, for the question. I mean, as you know, it's political will. I mean, it's really what is the folks that are in power want to push as an agenda. And then certainly, this effort's been going on for 10, 12 years now. So in county commissions have changed, the votes come up once I know of, maybe twice, and we had different Cheat Neck region. We've had different areas of the county that's come before a vote. So certainly I would hope we'd look at it again, but it's a powerful thing. Planning and zoning can really help us as a county and direct some of the development. I was in Harpers Ferry just Wednesday. We're working on the Hilltop Hotel there, and I was with some folks. They've had a heck of a time with that project to just get it off the ground. And luckily, the town's been very, very supportive of it, but folks have come out against certain aspects of it. And one of the developers said to me, I've moved from Loudoun County, which had a huge book of planning and zoning, to Jefferson County, which is one of the counties that has some great planning and zoning regulation. And then, I keep moving to Berkeley County, which has nothing, very little. So you see the development. I mean, there's been some push. Folks move from Virginia to Jefferson County and then keep going because of the lack of planning. And that's not always, that's not a good thing. So I mean, really think we've got to be cognizant of what planning means, but we can't stifle growth either. I mean, so it's a balance, and certainly there's different folks that have different views on it. But as an architect, as a planner, it's an important aspect of keeping quality of life. This whole idea of connectivity is important, and it comes through planning, looking ahead.
One of the things that was a handcuffing development in West Lafayette was that even though we had the overall community plan for the county, there were different zones that were R1W, Residential 1, West Lafayette, or CBW, Central Business, West Lafayette. And our city council had determined there that if you were going to build something more than 35 feet, so more than 3 stories, you had to come through what we called their plan development, almost everywhere else, plan unit development, PUD, to get approval. And in that approval process, there's a rendering that's required. that showed everything, including materials of the building, number of square feet, what the uses were, the number of, if it was a housing project, the number of beds and the number of units. And if you were to change that by more than 5%, you had to come back to city council again. And it was city council's way to really stay strong on what was going to happen in the community. One of the reasons I stayed to make sure the downtown development plan got through was that really started getting the city away from that by setting up standards that were stringent but not draconian, to be able to allow development to occur in the community in a way that the community would like, without horribly taxing the resources of the city. You know, I think in 3.5 years, I had more than a dozen planned developments that came through, and it wasn't that tough for me. But I tell you, the county office was pretty tired of seeing me come through, because there was another planned development that was coming through. So why won't your council just allow a building to go in? I've tried. So there is a lot that can be done through planning, but also there's a lot that can be stopped through planning as well.
I want to add to that a little bit, because one of the things we did do, we engaged the WVU students in a project to actually mock up what would be a submission to planning and zoning for the county. That was a great exercise, because one thing I said to the group was, what are the expectations here? You know, what do you expect from a consultant to submit? Because it can't be open-ended, and it has to be very defined. You need a checklist, really. What do we expect to have? And it takes out the subjectivity of it. So we're trying to be much more black and white objective about submissions. And, you know, if somebody says they want a house, well, that means something to one person and something different to another. So what is the house? You know, is it a two unit? Is it a duplex? Is it a townhouse?
Is it a pole barn?
Is it a pole barn? And what's the quality of materials? You know, does it have wood shingles? Is it a metal roof? I mean, those aspects it's just critical as far as process, I think.
Yeah, and I would just comment, having been involved a little bit with some of that clear expectations on everybody's part is the key to making planning work, when you're talking about land use regulation and those things. We did get a question from the internet. Are there plans to maintain the integrity of Smithtown Road, Route 73? There's current work being done to fix the slippage without allowing large trucks, 18-wheelers, using it to skip the way station on 79 be considered. Truck traffic in Morgantown in our area has been a hot topic. I will let you know that there are plans in our, I think it's a tier 2 project, to actually upgrade Smithtown Road to make it a more standard roadway. As far as weight limitations, the reason a lot of those trucks are not using the interstate is the interstate has a weight limit, and I'm grossly simplifying this, of 70,000 pounds for 4 to 6 axle truck. The Division of Highway Standards, 80,000 pounds. So a lot of those trucks cannot use the interstate, and the interstates, and we've investigated this pretty thoroughly, standard is based on maintaining the life of the interstate bridges. Interstate bridges are extremely expensive to replace, and the heavier weights kill them almost geometrically faster than the 70,000 pounds. So the DOH's standard of 80,000 pounds, they actually allow plus or minus 10%. So a lot of those trucks that are using the state maintained roads rather than interstate can weigh up to 88,000 pounds, as opposed to the interstate's weight limit of 70,000 pounds. The Division of Highways, as you've probably known, if you followed the city of Morgantown's concerns with truck traffic, is unwilling to limit the weights on their roadway. And so that's part of the issue that's going on with downtown Morgantown as well. And so to try to limit traffic on truck weight on 73 would face an even bigger uphill fight, I think, than trying to limit the truck traffic downtown. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, we've only got about 3 or 4 minutes, so we'll take one more.
Can you just comment on, we were all looking out the windows at this beautiful vista of green that's surrounding us here. Can you talk a little bit about what the county, what the general planning perspective is on maintaining visual beauty of the area that is really endemic or intrinsic to West Virginia versus sort of this, human infrastructure, and then how you take environmental concerns into consideration for, animals and trees and flowers and that kind of thing. And then in addition to that, what is sort of the community feeling on the importance of those two aspects of planning?
I'll give a quick comment and then I'll ask our others. For transportation planning, transportation projects follow the National Environmental Policy Act, which we look very carefully at all of those sorts of issues. And we also try to incorporate the community's values into our transportation plan for maintaining these kinds of views. So there's a very detailed process. And part of the reason that I gave you that 7-year time frame for getting a transportation plan project built is the environmental concerns that go all the way to the Environmental Protection Agency on this.
I'll just add, in the 2013 comprehensive plan, there were several recommendations on the land management side of the document that talked about trying to update our subdivision regulations to require or at least encourage new development to try to preserve natural resources that were on that site. So large growth trees, wetlands that were already in place, those type of things. That hadn't worked into our subdivision regulations yet, but that's something obviously that was a concern in Morgantown, is trying to preserve our natural beauty for sure.
Certainly on the county side with our West Run Planning District, there's certain landscape requirements, buffers, certain green space requirements. Stormwater management and runoff from sites is really important. Grades of road inclines, which affect the runoff, are really important. So those aspects are, baked in our current planning efforts. So I think that's certainly respect those things.
And that's very similar at the university as well. Green space is something we value as a university. Those are arboretums, even out to our farms and other areas. And so it's part of our plan. It's something, sustainability is actually one of the 8 guiding principles that we have to make sure we're good stewards of our environment as well as the communities around us to preserve those spaces. So
Yeah, it's when I was in Indiana, the stock line was, we don't have mountains, we don't have oceans. So what can we do to attract people and companies? My God, I've got mountains here, so it makes it a lot easier. But how do we protect it? And that's in where I was editor of the business paper in Lexington, Kentucky, and there they went to an extreme. The city and county merged in 1974. I wish that I had an opportunity. I knew the mayor from the time, it was well before my birth, but knew him when I was in town, and wish that I had the understanding of what a bloodletting that must have been to get the joint government put into place before he passed. Would love to have talked with him when I was in Indiana and here as well. But part of the aspects of what they did there was when they merged the city and the county, they put in what's called the urban services boundary. And that is, it's up for vote by city council every 5 years, and it brings bloody war to Fayette County, Lexington, Kentucky, because it was meant to protect the rural, largely horse farms in the outskirts of Lexington. And you still have a beautiful rural vista out there. But if you're a home builder or you're a commercial or industrial developer, it really ends up pitting what is the version of the partnership in Lexington, Commerce Lexington versus city council, because they will largely start butting heads with council every 5 years to try to expand this boundary. And as a result, what you've seen are very, very high prices for residential in the community, still an odd need for infill in the downtown. They have not figured out, they figure having that would be enough to do all the infill that you need, but they have incentivized nothing. And you see industry go to different communities surrounding Lexington. The world's largest Toyota plant is in the county just north of Lexington. They picked Lexington, but they went into a different county because they could get sewer and water and trash collection which are all part of the things the urban service boundary will not provide you if you go outside of it.
I think, failing any other questions, I think our time is up. But so I would like to thank our panelists very much. We greatly appreciate it.
Thank you for